Hi, and welcome to RJ Academy. And today I will teach you Class 12 English, Chapter Deep Water. Have you ever felt entirely paralyzed by fear? We often think of fear as something that controls us, but today we're looking at how a future U.S. Supreme Court justice dismantled a deeply rooted phobia. This story comes directly from the author, William Douglas. He wrote this autobiographical account to document an intensely personal psychological battle. To understand his fear, we have to establish exactly when it started. There are two distinct childhood incidents in the text. The origin point happened when Douglas was 3 or 4 years old. He was standing on a California beach with his father when a massive wave knocked him down, buried him in water, and took his breath away, leaving him terrified. Years later, when he was 10 or 11, Douglas decided it was time to learn how to swim. He chose the local YMCA pool. His mother had constantly warned him about the local river, recounting drowning after drowning, so the YMCA pool felt like the logical, safe alternative. This map illustrates the Yakima River system. The river itself was known to be treacherous, with unpredictable currents. By comparison, the YMCA pool offered a highly controlled environment. It was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, with a very gradual drop to 9 feet at the other side. That initial beach experience created a baseline psychological aversion to water. Stepping into the YMCA pool required him to subdue his pride and face a pre-existing anxiety. Choosing this highly controlled, safe environment sets up a bitter irony for the trauma that followed. Douglas was sitting alone by the edge of the pool, feeling timid, when an 18-year-old boy, described as a big bruiser, picked him up and tossed him directly into the 9-foot deep end. As he sank, Douglas was frightened, but still capable of rational thought. He formulated a clear physical plan: wait for his feet to hit the bottom, make a massive spring upward to the surface, and paddle to the edge. But the execution failed. The 9 feet felt like 90. When he finally jumped, he came up slowly. His physical reality quickly collapsed into a psychological nightmare. He couldn't breathe, his legs hung paralyzed like dead weights, and his screams were completely frozen underwater. Eventually, his body stopped fighting. The sheer panic gave way to a quiet, peaceful oblivion just before he blacked out. Before we move forward, let's practice actively recalling this material for your exam. What was Douglas's rational plan when tossed into the pool, and what emotions did he actually experience under the water? Pause the video and say it out loud. He planned to hit the bottom, spring up, and paddle to safety. In reality, he experienced suffocation, complete paralysis of his limbs, and stark terror, which eventually faded into a dark, peaceful surrender. Understanding this shift from active panic to passive oblivion is essential to analyzing the text. Look at this river landscape in the Cascades. This represents what Douglas lost. The trauma of the pool haunted him deep into adulthood. Every time he tried to fish for salmon in the Columbia River or wade in the waters of Warm Lake, the icy horror returned, paralyzing his legs and ruining his trips entirely. To reclaim his life, Douglas made a calculated decision one October. He hired an instructor and began a methodical, piece-by-piece process to dismantle his fear. First, the instructor put a belt around Douglas attached to an overhead pulley system, allowing him to cross the pool without sinking. Next, they spent months practicing putting his face underwater to rhythmically exhale and inhale. Finally, for weeks, they did nothing but kick drills at the edge of the pool until his paralyzed legs began to respond to commands. The instructor successfully assembled an integrated swimmer. But building the physical mechanics of swimming is not the same as conquering terror. The instructor's job was finished, but Douglas knew he had to test his psychological endurance completely alone. To banish any residual doubts, Douglas traveled to vast, open bodies of water. Here, at Warm Lake, high in the mountain meadows, he stripped, dived in, and swam entirely across to the other shore and back. Tiny vestiges of old terror tried to return, but he actively frowned and brushed them aside. He connects this personal victory to a statement made by his friend, President Franklin D. Roosevelt. "All we have to fear is fear itself." Douglas knew the physical sensation of nearly dying, and he intimately knew the paralyzing terror that the fear of death produces. By experiencing both of those extremes and surviving them, his appreciation for life and his sheer will to live grew far more intense. Here is your chapter cheat sheet summarizing the 5 key phases of his journey. Take a screenshot now to use for your board exam preparation. Notes for this chapter are in the description. Catch you next time.